Welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book Confessions of a Young Widow, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. It's been 2 years since I made a strange decision to move to Petropolis in the middle of June. That choice stirred up all kinds of rumors and guesses. Even you, in your letters here, tried to figure it out, coming up with all sorts of reasons, each one more ridiculous than the last. Those letters of yours, full of care and curiosity, showed both your friendship and your natural interest as a woman. But I never replied I couldn't. It wasn't the right time to open my heart or explain everything that had pushed me away from court life. Back there, I should have been enjoying operas at the Lyrico Theater, your card games, and the family evenings at Cousin Barras' house. All of that was meant to help me forget my recent loss. Many people believe that my new status as a widow was the only reason for my sudden move. It seemed like the most obvious explanation. I let them think that, just like I let every other rumor pass. And I stayed in Petropolis. The next summer you came here with your husband, determined not to return to the city without uncovering the secret I refused to share. Your words, written or spoken, got you nowhere. I stayed silent, like a tomb, unreadable, like the Sphinx. You gave up and left. Since then you've called me nothing but your Sphinx. And truly, I was a Sphinx. If you had answered my riddle like Oedipus did, if you had said the word man, you would have discovered my secret and broken my spell. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, as they say in novels. Now's the time to tell you this chapter of my life. I want to do it through letters, not face to face. Maybe I'd blush if we spoke directly. This way, my heart can open more freely, and shame won't stop me from speaking my truth. Notice I don't mention tears. That alone shows that peace has returned to me. My letters will come every 8 days, so this story might feel like a serial in a weekly newspaper. I promise you'll enjoy it, and learn something too. 8 days have passed since I last wrote to you, and now I can finally go to you, hold you, kiss you, thank you. I need to feel alive again. These past 2 years count for nothing in the story of my life. They were years of boredom, of hidden despair, of wounded pride, of love buried deep inside me. Yes, Leah, I admit it. But only time, distance, and the thought of my heart being deceived, of my dignity being hurt, could bring me the peace I feel today. And you should know I didn't only gain that peace. I also came to understand a man whose image I carry in my mind, a man who strangely looks like many others. That alone is no small thing, and I hope this lesson will help me ease it, will help you and our young friends who still have so much to learn. Show them these letters. They are pages from a guide I wish I had had before. Maybe then I wouldn't have lost a dream in 2 years of my life. I should end this letter here. It is the preface to my story study, my tale, call it what you like. I won't argue over names, nor will I ask experts for the right label. Whether it's a study or a novel, this is simply a book of truths, a simple episode told with honesty. It comes from the quiet talks between two souls, from the deep trust of two hearts who care for each other and truly deserve that care. Goodbye, for now. Chapter 2. The First Day. It was during the time when my husband was still alive. Back then, the city of Rio de Janeiro felt full of life, nothing like the dull monotony I now feel through your letters and the newspapers I read. My house used to be a popular place where a few charming young men and elegant girls would gather. I, chosen by all as their queen, presided over those cozy evenings at home. Outside there were lively nights at the theaters, visits from friends, parties, and 1,000 other amusements that gave my life a kind of outward joy. But the deeper happiness, the real kind, the kind that grows and lasts, he didn't have. If I wasn't truly happy, I at least seemed cheerful. And here is how my story begins. One day my husband asked me almost as a special favor not to go to the Lyrico Theater that evening. He said he couldn't go with me because the next day a ship was leaving and he had to take care of some business. His request made sense, but for some reason, something inside me, a bad feeling, perhaps whispered in my ear. I answered firmly that I would go to the theater, and I would go with him. He insisted, and so did I. It didn't take much for me to believe that my pride was on the line. Today I understand it was just my stubbornness, or maybe fate itself. I always had a way of getting what I wanted. My tone left no room for argument. Even though he clearly didn't want to, my husband gave in. That night, we went together to the Lyrico Theater. There weren't many people there, and the singers sounded off, like they had colds or sore throats. At the end of the first act, my husband turned to me with a strange smile and said, laughing, "Ain't glad about this." "This?" I asked, frowning. "This terrible show," he replied. "You made such a big deal about coming tonight, as if it were a matter of honor. I'm glad you see now that the show wasn't worth all that effort." "On the contrary," I said. "I think it's wonderful." "All right," he said. "Well, that's fine." Of course I had to pretend I wasn't hurt. I couldn't let him see that he had won. But truthfully, deep down I was completely bored with everything, the show, the night, even myself. My husband, who didn't dare to argue, stayed quiet with the look of someone defeated. He stepped forward a bit, standing in front of our box seat, and scanned the few occupied boxes across from us with his opera glasses. I pulled my chair back and leaned against the wall of the box, watching people walk by in the hallway. In that hallway, right in front of our box, a man stood leaning against the wall, smoking and staring straight at me. At first I didn't pay much attention, but his constant gaze forced me to notice. I looked at him more closely, trying to see if he was someone we knew, maybe waiting to be recognized, so he could come over and greet us. That kind of playful behavior could be explained by familiarity. But I didn't recognize him. After a few seconds, realizing he hadn't stopped looking at me, I turned my eyes away and focused on the stage and the audience below. My husband, done checking the other boxes, handed me the opera glasses and sat down at the back, facing me. We exchanged a few words. About 15 minutes later, the orchestra began the opening music for the second act. I stood up, and my husband moved his chair closer to the front. While he did that, I quickly glanced back at the hallway. The man was still there. I asked my husband to close the door of the box. The second act started. Then, out of curiosity, I tried to see if my mysterious observer would come inside and take a seat in the theater. I wanted to get a better look at him in the crowd. But either he didn't come in or I just didn't notice, because I couldn't find him again. The second act passed even more boring than the first. During the break, I moved my chair back again, and my husband, saying it was hot, opened the door of our box. I took a quick look at the hallway. No one was there. But just a few minutes later, the same man returned. He stood in the exact same spot and stared at me again with that same annoying intensity. We women are all a little proud of our beauty, and we like to be admired by the world. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would feel uneasy because of a man's attention, but that night, at the theater, something changed. It's true that we sometimes admire how bold a man can be, even if it borders on reckless. But there's a way of doing it that bothers you and makes you nervous, not just rude but dangerous. That's exactly what was happening here. This man kept coming after me so intensely that I had no choice but to wonder. Either he was truly crazy with passion, or he was incredibly shameless. Either way, I couldn't afford to give him any hope. I thought about all this during the break between acts. The third act was about to start. I waited for that silent follower of mine to leave, and then I turned to my husband. "Shall we go?" I asked. "Oh," he replied. "I'm just tired," I said. "But the show is wonderful." My husband tried to argue with me, like most men do when they don't want to lose an evening out. "If it's so good, why are you sleepy?" I didn't answer. We left. In the hallway, we ran into the Azevedo family. They were coming back from visiting someone in a private box. I stopped to hug the ladies and told them I had a headache and needed to go home. We reached the door on Rua dos Ciganos and waited for our carriage. And who should appear right there, leaning against the opposite doorway? The mysterious man again. I felt my face burn with anger. I pulled my hood down as far as I could and waited. The carriage arrived quickly. He stayed there, silent and unmoving, like the stone wall he leaned on. During the ride home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was still lost in thought when the carriage stopped in front of our house in Matacavalos. I felt ashamed of myself. I decided then and there not to think about him again. But will you believe me, Carlota? I ended up falling asleep half an hour later than I planned. My mind kept replaying the hallway, the doorway, and that strange admirer of mine over and over again. The next day I thought about it less. I hadn't thought about that scene for 8 whole days, and I was grateful to God for taking it off my mind. It had been a worry that could have destroyed me, so I decided to help myself by staying away from the theater for a while. I stayed home more, keeping the quiet evenings with friends. But soon it would be time for your little girl's birthday. I remembered that I had promised to make something special for the family celebration, and I had started working on it a month earlier. I needed to finish it. One Thursday morning, I called for the materials I needed to continue my project. As I opened a bundle of wool, I found a small blue envelope wrapped inside. That surprised me. There was no name on the letter, just sealed tight as if waiting for me to open it. Who could it be for? Could it be my husband's? I used to open all his letters without thinking twice. So I broke the seal and pulled out a pink piece of paper. The letter said, "Don't be shocked, Eugenia. This is the act of someone desperate, and this desperation comes from love. I love you deeply." For some time now, I've tried to run from you and bury these feelings, but I can't anymore. Didn't you see me at the Lyric Theater? Something deep inside pushed me there. Since then, I haven't seen you again. When will I see you again? If I never do, I'll accept it. But if your heart beats for me, even once a day, that's enough for a love that doesn't chase pleasure or seek attention. If I've hurt you, forgive me like you would a sinner. If you can love me back, make me your God. I read those words with trembling hands and blurred vision. For minutes after, I didn't know where I was or what I felt. Thoughts flew around in my head like dark birds flying together before a storm. I stared at the letter in front of me, my hands trembling slightly. Was it love that had moved this unknown man to write? Or was it just another trick from a cold and calculating seducer? I looked around nervously, afraid my husband might walk in at any moment. The mysterious words on the paper felt like sharp eyes watching me, like those of a cruel snake. In a sudden, uncontrollable motion, I crushed the letter in my hands. If only Eve had done the same to the serpent that tempted her, there would have been no sin. But I couldn't be sure of the same result. This serpent before Methys one I crushed might grow many heads, like the Hydra of Lerna. Don't think I made these biblical and mythological comparisons right then. At that moment, I wasn't thinking, he was panicking. Only much later could I connect two thoughts clearly. Two feelings battled inside me. First, a deep terror inspired by the abyss, an abyss I sensed behind that letter. Second, a bitter shame that told me I wasn't as respected by this stranger as I had hoped. He must not have thought highly of me if he believed such a method would work. Only after my mind calmed did I think of what I should have considered from the start. Who had placed the letter here? My first instinct was to call my servants. But I stopped myself quickly. A simple question wouldn't give me answers, and worse, it would spread news of the letter's discovery. What good would that do? I said nothing. Still, I couldn't stop thinking. The act had been bold. So many things could have gone wrong. What drove him to take such a risk? Was it love or just seduction? Going over this dilemma again and again, part of me despite all the danger wanted to believe in love. That version respected my position as a married woman and fed my pride as a beautiful one. I tried to find the answer by reading the letter again. I read it not once, but twice. 3 times? 5 times. An unstoppable curiosity kept me tied to that piece of paper. I took a deep breath and made up my mind to destroy it completely, declaring that if anything like this happened again, not one slave or servant would remain in my house. I crossed the room holding the letter, walked straight into my study, lit a candle, and burned that paper that seemed to burn my hands and my head at the same time. As the last spark of the letter turned black and flew away, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my husband. Without thinking, I threw myself into his arms. He hugged me, surprised. And as I held on tighter, I felt him gently push me away, saying, "That's enough. You're going to smother me." I stepped back. It hurt me deeply to see that man who could and should have saved me fail to understand, even instinctively, that by hugging him so tightly, I was holding on to the idea of duty itself. But this pain didn't last long. It gave way for a moment to a feeling of fear. The ashes from the letter were still on the floor, and the candle still burned brightly in the middle of the day. That alone should have made him ask questions. But he did not, even out of curiosity. He took 2 steps across the study and left the room. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. It wasn't the first bitter tear I had cried. Could this be the first warning of sin? Chapter 3. A month went by. During that time, nothing changed at home. No more letters arrived, and my extreme vigilance became completely useless. I couldn't forget the letter incident. If only that were all. The first words kept coming back to me over and over. Then the others, all of them. I knew the letter by heart. Do you remember? One of my vanities was having a good memory. Even in this gift, I was punished. Those words confused me, made my head burn. Why? Because I found in them an indescribable charm, painful because it came with guilt, but still a charm I couldn't escape. It wasn't my heart that was involved. It was my imagination. My imagination was destroying me. The struggle between duty and fantasy is cruel and dangerous for weak minds. And I was weak. The mystery captivated my mind. Eventually days passed, and other distractions helped take my thoughts away from that obsession. After a month, if I hadn't completely forgotten him and his letter, I was at least calm enough to laugh at myself and my fears. On a Thursday night, some guests were at my house, many friends, but not you. My husband hadn't returned yet, and no one really noticed or missed him. Despite being a kind gentleman, he didn't have the special charm needed to enjoy such gatherings. We had sung, played music, and talked. Everyone felt cheerful and open. Amelia Azevedo's uncle made everyone laugh with his odd behavior. Amelia amazed us all with her angelic voice. We were resting between entertainments, waiting for tea time. Then someone announced my husband. He wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a tall, thin, elegant man. I couldn't recognize him. My husband walked forward, and in the middle of the general silence, he came to introduce him to me. I heard from my husband that our guest was named Emilio. I looked at him closely and held back a gasp. It was really him. My shock showed only in a brief, startled movement. No one noticed. He apparently noticed even less. His eyes were fixed on me, and with a graceful gesture, he spoke to me in polite, flattering words. I answered as best as I could. We exchanged introductions, and for a few minutes, everyone fell into an awkward silence. All eyes turned toward the new guest. I looked again, too, and saw clearly what made him so captivating. His beautiful, proud head, his deep, magnetic gaze, his elegant and gentle manners, and a certain unique charm that sharply contrasted with the exaggerated and dull behavior of the other young men. This quick observation didn't last long. I couldn't, and shouldn't, meet Emilia's eyes again. I lowered mine and waited anxiously for the conversation to return to normal. My husband tried to lead the talk, but unfortunately, the main subject remained Emilio. We learned then that he was from the countryside, the son of wealthy parents, and had received a refined education in Europe. He had traveled almost everywhere over there. He had just returned to Brazil, and decided to spend some time in Rio de Janeiro before going back to his home province. That was all we found out. Then came countless questions about his travels, and he answered each one with kindness and interest, satisfying everyone's curiosity. Only, I stayed silent. I couldn't bring myself to ask anything. Inside, I begged for answers to this strange story that had started in a theater hallway, continued through an anonymous letter, and now reached my own home introduced by my husband himself. I watched Emilio from time to time during the evening. He seemed calm and composed, answering questions politely and sharing, with quiet charm, stories from his travels. A thought crossed my mind. Could he really be the same mysterious man from the theater and the letter? At first, I thought yes, but I might have been wrong. I couldn't clearly remember the other man's face. It felt like they were the same person, yet could it not also be a strange coincidence, a surprising resemblance? I lost myself in these thoughts, and time passed without my notice. I sat there, surrounded by conversation, yet somehow absent. Tea was served later, and then more music filled the room. Emilio listened with deep attention, clearly enjoying every note. He showed the same good taste in music as he did in conversation, measured, thoughtful, and never too much. By the end of the night, he had won everyone over. My husband, especially, was beaming. It was clear he felt lucky to have found a new friend for himself and a pleasant guest for our family gatherings. Emilio promised to return, and with that, he left. Once we were alone, I turned to my husband and asked, "Where do you know this man from?" "Has a gem, isn't he?" he replied. "We met at my office a few days ago." I liked him right away. He seems to have a kind heart, is quick-witted, and as polite as a wise man should be. I don't think anyone could dislike him. I listened in silence, saying nothing. My husband paused, and then asked, "Did I do something wrong by bringing him here?" "Why would you have done wrong?" I asked. "No reason at all. What harm could there be? As a fine man." I ended the conversation by calling a slave to give some orders, and then I went to my room alone. That night, believe me, I did not sleep like a righteous person. What truly upset me was the way my thoughts kept returning to this man, again and again, ever since that night. I couldn't fully escape this feeling that came on its own, overpowering me, pulling me in. It was the curiosity of the heart, that first warning sign of storms destined to destroy our lives and futures. It seemed like this man could read my soul, and knew just how to appear at the perfect moment, taking over my imagination like a poetic and powerful figure. You, who met him later, tell me if you consider everything that had happened, wasn't it natural for him to make such an impression on someone like me? I say someone like me, because my situation was unique. If you never knew it before, at least you must have suspected. If my husband had truly been a husband to me, and if I had truly been a wife to him, my salvation would have been certain. But things were not so. We entered our marital home like two strangers forced by bad weather and late hours to share the same room at an inn. My marriage was born from calculation and convenience. I don't blame my parents. They believed they were making me happy and died thinking I was exactly that. Despite everything, I might still have found happiness with the husband they gave me. All he needed to do was see in me a soul connected to his, a heart united with his. But that didn't happen. My husband saw marriage the way most people do, followed the words of the Lord in Genesis, and nothing more. Beyond that, he treated me with a kind of respect and slept peacefully, believing he had done his duty. Duty. That was my only hope. I knew emotions weren't meant to rule us and that we can overcome them through willpower. In that sense, I felt strong enough to push away dangerous thoughts. But it wasn't the present that overwhelmed and frightened, might was the future. I was still under the spell of that story. Not so much because of the man himself, but because of the mystery around him. Reality would soon show me the truth, and I comforted myself with the hope that I could overcome this guilty affection. But could I truly resist such feelings in the future, even a near future I couldn't yet imagine, and keep my honor and conscience untouched? That was the real question. In the middle of these doubts, I felt no hand reaching out to save me, not even my husband's. On the contrary, when I turned to him after burning a letter, do you remember how he pushed me away with an irritated word? That's what I thought about, and felt deeply, during the long night after Amelia's visit. The next day my mind was tired, but whether it was calm or simply exhaustion, those painful thoughts that had tormented me all night faded with the morning light, like creatures of darkness and loneliness. Then, a ray of clarity appeared in my mind. It was the same idea returning, the one that had come to me, again and again, through all my worries of the past few days. Why should I be afraid? I asked myself. I'm just a silly, frightened woman. I wear myself out building mountains, only to collapse from exhaustion in the middle of flat land. Come on. There's nothing blocking my path to living as a respected, virtuous woman. Even if this man is who I think he is, he's probably just a bad reader of dramatic novels. The mystery gives him value. Up close, he'll likely turn out to be ordinary or worse, unpleasant. Chapter 4. I could go on and bore you with every little thing that happened each day, but I won't. Emilio kept coming around our house, always polite, serious, and impressive in the way he carried himself, so charming, so real, never pretending to be someone he wasn't. Everyone liked him. Even my husband grew closer to him, which surprised me. He started acting like Emilio was this amazing new friend, full of energy and admiration. It confused me. Why was my husband suddenly so taken with this guy? I tried asking him about it. I even tried planting doubts in his mind, just to see how he'd react. But nothing worked. He wouldn't hear a word against Emilio. What can I say? My husband told me once. I don't know why, but I really like this young man. I feel like he's a good person, and I can't hide how much I enjoy being around him. But you barely know him, I argued. Oh, come on. I've heard only good things about him. And besides, you can tell just by looking at him that he's decent and well-mannered. Looks can be deceiving, I said. Well, I know better. To be honest, I could have told my husband not to let Emilio keep coming over. I had the power to do that. But whenever I thought about doing it, something made me laugh at myself for worrying so much. I told myself I was strong enough to handle whatever might happen. Also, Emilio acted perfectly toward me. He treated me with deep respect, no different from how he treated other women. He never gave any sign of having secret intentions or hidden thoughts. There was nothing to worry about, least, nothing obvious. So what else could I do? I couldn't act cold or indifferent when he was always so kind and proper. It would have been rude. The more time passed, the more I convinced myself that everything I had felt before, that strange pull, that uneasy feeling, had nothing to do with him. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe I had mistaken him for someone else. After all, as I told you earlier, I hadn't gotten a good look at the man from the theater. It didn't take long before we became very close, and I was to him just like all the others, an admirer and someone admire. From social gatherings, Emilio moved on to regular daytime visits, first when my husband was home, and later even when he was away. Usually it was my husband who brought him along. Emilio would arrive in his little carriage, driving with great charm and elegance. He spent hours at our house, playing piano or chatting. The first time I received him alone, I admit I felt a shiver of nervousness. But it was a silly fear. Emilio always acted completely indifferent to any suspicions I might have had. That day, if I still had any doubts, they all disappeared. 2 months passed like this. One afternoon, late in the day, I was alone at home. I was waiting for you to come by so we could go visit your sick father. A carriage stopped in front of the house. I sent someone to check who it was. It was Emilio. I welcomed him as usual. I told him we were about to visit a sick person, and he immediately offered to leave. I insisted he stay until you arrived. He agreed, but it seemed like something else kept him there besides simple politeness. We talked about random things for half an hour. At one point during the conversation, Emilio stood up and walked over to the window. I also got up to go to the piano and pick up a fan. When I turned back toward the sofa, I noticed through the mirror that Emilio was looking at me, but not in the way he usually did. His expression had changed completely. It was as if all of his soul had focused into that single gaze. I shivered again. Still, I forced myself to stay calm and sat down, more serious than ever before. Emilio slowly walked toward me. I looked at him. The same intense look was still there. I lowered my eyes. "Are you afraid?" he asked gently. I didn't answer. But I started trembling once more, and I felt as though my heart might leap right out of my chest. Because in those words, I heard the same feeling that had been in his eyes, and it reminded me exactly of the tone from his letter. He looked at me closely and asked again, "You were frightened?" "Of what?" I replied, trying to laugh so the moment wouldn't feel heavier than it already was. "It seemed like it," he said. We sat in silence for a moment. "Donna Eugenia," he said, sitting down. "I don't want to hide it anymore, the secret that has tortured me for so long. It would be pointless to keep it buried. Whether it brings me happiness or sorrow, I need to know the truth of how things stand. Donna Eugenia, I love you." I can't explain how I felt when I heard those words. I felt my face go pale, my hands turn cold, and I tried to speak but couldn't find my voice. Emilio kept going. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm risking. I understand how wrong this love is. But what can I do? It's fate. I've traveled many miles, passed by so many beautiful women, and never once did my heart beat for any of them. But now, I've found my rare joy, or my terrible misfortunato love, or be rejected by you. I accept whatever comes. No matter your answer, I won't refuse it. I will take it. So tell me, what is your answer? As he spoke, I tried to gather my thoughts. When he finally stopped, I looked up and said, "What answer do you expect from me?" "Any answer." "There's only one possible." "You don't love me." "No. And I can't, I don't, and I wouldn't even if I could or wanted to. Please leave." I stood up. He stood too. "I'll go," he said quietly, "and take hell with me." I shrugged, trying to show I didn't care. "Oh, I know you feel nothing," he said. "That's what hurts the most. I'd rather feel your hate." Hate, yes. But indifference, that's the worst punishment of all. Still, I accept it. A crime like mine deserves a punishment just as heavy. He picked up his hat and stepped closer to me. I took 2 steps back. "Oh, don't be afraid." "Do I frighten you?" "Fear?" I shot back, trying to sound strong. "Disgust?" he asked. "Maybe," I whispered. "Just one more thing," Emilio said. "Do you still have that letter?" "Oh," I said. "So you were the one who wrote it?" "I was." He looked unsteady as he neared the door, his hand moving to his chest. I felt a brief wave of pity, but I knew he had to go, no matter how much pain he was in. Still, I took 1 step toward him and called out from a distance, "Will you give me an answer?" He stopped and turned around. "Of course. How could you pretend to be my husband's friend, knowing what you were planning to do?" "It was a dishonorable act. I know that. But my love is the kind that doesn't turn away from dishonor. It's the only kind of love I understand. Please, forgive me. I don't want to bother you any longer. Goodbye. Forever." And with that, he left. I thought I heard him sob quietly as he walked away. I went over to the sofa and sat down. A moment later, I heard the sound of a carriage rolling away outside. As for the time between when he left and when you arrived, I have no idea how it passed. That's where you found me, sitting there just as I was. Until then, I had only known love through books. This man seemed to embody the kind of love I had dreamed about and read about. The thought that Emilio's heart was bleeding at that very moment stirred in me a deep feeling of compassion. And that compassion was the first step. Who knows, I thought to myself, what he must be going through right now. And in the end, how guilty is he, really? He loves me, he told me so. His love was stronger than reason. He didn't realize I was sacred to him. He opened his heart. To love that was his excuse. Then I went over every word he had said, trying to remember the tone in which he spoke them. I also recalled my own words and how I had responded to his confessions. Maybe I was too harsh. I could have kept my dignity without leaving a wound in his heart. If I had spoken more gently, I might have earned his respect and admiration. Now he will still love me, but he'll never remember this moment without bitterness. I was lost in these thoughts when you came in. Do you remember how you found me sad and asked why? I didn't answer. We went to your aunt's house, and I didn't change my mood at all. That night, When my husband asked me about Emilio, I answered without thinking. He didn't come here today. Really? He said. Then he must be sick. I don't know. I'll go see him tomorrow. Where? To his house. Why? When do I? Maybe he's ill. I don't think so. Let's wait and see. I had a terrible night. The thought of Emilio kept me from sleeping. I imagined him crying bloody tears at that very moment, broken-hearted and alone. Was it pity? Was it love? Carla, it was both. What else could it be? I had stepped onto a dangerous path, and some force was pulling me in. I, who could have been strong, was now weak. I blame no one but myself. See you on Sunday. Chapter 5. The next afternoon, when my husband came back, I asked about Emilio. I didn't look for him, he told me. I followed your advice. If he doesn't come today, then maybe tomorrow. So, one day passed without any word from him. The following day, since he still hadn't shown up, my husband went to his house. And I'll be honest with you, was the one who reminded my husband to go. I waited anxiously for his answer. My husband returned in the afternoon. He had a certain sadness in his eyes. I asked what was wrong. I don't know exactly, he said. I found the young man in bed. He told me it was just a mild cold, but I don't believe that's all. Then what could it be? I asked, looking straight at him. Something more serious. He talked to me about traveling north. He seems sad, distracted, and worried. Even though he says he hopes to see his parents again, he also fears he might never return. He has thoughts of dying on the trip. I don't know what happened to him, but something did. Maybe money trouble. That answer shook me deeply. I can tell you now that this single sentence played a big part in everything that came later. After a pause, I asked, "But what do you plan to do?" I'll talk to him openly. Ask what's going on and help if I can. In any case, I won't let him leave. What do you think? I agree, I said. Everything that happened only made Emilio take up more space in my thoughts. And I confess with pain it wasn't just memory anymore. My heart would beat faster every time I thought of him. The next evening, we had a few guests over. I wasn't really part of the group. I felt down and alone. I was angry with myself. I imagined myself as the cause of Emilio's suffering, and the idea that he might be hurting even more because of me was unbearable. It must have been around 9 o'clock when my husband arrived, guiding Emilio by the arm. Everyone turned in surprise. I hadn't seen Emilio in a few days, and already people were asking about him. But that wasn't the only reason for my worry. When he finally showed up, his face was pale like wax. I won't tell you everything that happened that night, not every detail at least. But Emilio seemed to be in pain. He wasn't cheerful like before. That night, he was unusually quiet, deeply sad, and it bothered everyone. But for me, it was worse, much worse. I felt responsible for his suffering. At one point, we managed to speak alone, away from the others. I'm sorry, I told him. If I said anything harsh, please forgive me. You must understand my position. When you told me what you did, I couldn't think straight. I know you've been hurt. Please, don't keep hurting. Try to forget. Thank you, he whispered. My husband mentioned your plans, I said. Yes, he replied. To return to my province. It's true. But you're still unwell. This illness will pass. He looked at me then with such a dark, painful expression that I felt afraid. Pass? How do you mean pass? In some way. Don't talk like that. What else do I have left in this world? He turned his eyes away to wipe a tear. What is this? I asked. Are you crying? The last tears, he said softly. Oh, if only you knew how much this hurts me. Don't cry, I beg you. I ask more than that. I ask you to live. Oh, in telling you to live, you're ordering me. And if I can't obey, if I can't go on, do you really believe someone can live with a thorn in their heart? What I'm writing feels ugly, but the way he spoke was full of passion, pain, and sorrow. I stood there, almost lost in his words, not knowing what to say. Some people were walking toward us, so I tried to end our conversation. Do you love me? I asked. Only love can give orders, right? Then it's love that tells you to stay alive. Emilio gave a small sign of joy. I got up to greet the people approaching. Thank you, he whispered in my ear. When Emilio said goodbye to me at the end of the evening, looking at me with eyes full of gratitude and love as he whispered, "See you tomorrow," I felt a deep confusion inside mixed with love, guilt, and tenderness. I could not explain it. Well, my husband said later, Emilio seems much happier today. I looked at him, unsure of what to say. Then I left the room quickly. In that moment, I saw my husband as the image of my own conscience, watching me, judging me silently. The next day, I received a letter from Emilio. Eugenia, thank you. You brought me back to life, and I owe it all to you. Thank you again. You turned a corpse into a man. I'll make a god out of a man. Be strong. Be brave. I read the letter, then read it again. And can I tell you this, Carlota? I kissed it. I kissed it many times, with all my soul, with passion, with madness. I was in love. I was truly in love. From that moment on, I felt the same inner battle, but now the roles had changed. Before, my heart had run from reason. Now, it was reason that ran from my heart. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was a sin. But something inside me, some part of my nature, made me believe that the pleasure I felt was proof enough, that my love was justified. I used those moments of joy to convince myself that what I felt was right. And when my husband was near me, I felt calmer, stronger, almost pure again. I'll stop here for now. I feel a tightness in my chest just thinking about everything that happened. It's the weight of memory. Until Sunday. Chapter 6. Eugenia sat by the window, watching the world go by as she thought about everything that had happened since her last letter. It had been a few days now, but the memory still felt fresh. She and Emilio had started writing to each other regularly, and after just 2 weeks, he was all she could think about. Her heart beat faster every time she heard the mailman's steps. No one in the house seemed to notice, not even her closest friends. Not even you, she thought with a small smile. They were careful, very careful. Two lovers hiding behind polite words and secret glances. Still, some people began to ask questions. Why was she so distracted? Why did she seem so sad lately? These comments always brought her back to reality, and she would try harder to hide her feelings. Her husband noticed most of all. He tried so hard to understand what was wrong, which made things worse for her. She didn't hate him, far from it, but his concern felt like pressure. Sometimes she answered him sharply, not because she was angry, but because she hated being questioned by him more than anyone else. One afternoon, when she got home earlier than expected, he came up to her and said gently, "Eugenia, I have something to tell you." She looked up, curious. "What is it?" "It's good news. Something I think will cheer you up." "Let me hear it then." "We're going on an outing." "Where to?" "The idea was mine," he explained. "I already talked to Emilio, and he loved it. We're thinking of going to Gavea this Sunday. We'll leave early in the morning. Of course, nothing is final yet. It depends on your approval. What do you think?" "I think it's a great idea," she replied calmly. "Wonderful," he said, clearly happy. "Carlota can come too." "And she should," Eugenia added. "And maybe a few other friends as well." Not long after, invitations went out to everyone, including you. You probably remember how much fun we had that day. But what you don't know is that during the trip, while everyone was distracted and enjoying themselves, Eugenia and Emilio shared a moment that changed everything. As they walked side by side, Emilio took her arm and asked softly, "Eugenia, are you sure you love me?" "I am," she replied without hesitation. "Then listen carefully. What I'm asking isn't really for mites from both our hearts. This is a chance to do something noble, something that could make us feel bigger than ourselves. There must be some quiet corner of the world where we could live far from everyone, close to the sky." "Flee?" "Yes." "Oh, never." "You don't love me." "I do love you. But already this is a sin. I don't want to go further." "You refuse happiness?" "I refuse shame." "You don't love me." Oh God, how should I answer? "Yes, I love you. But I want to remain in your eyes, the same woman, affectionate, yes, but up to a point pure." Love that calculates is not love at all. I didn't answer. Emilio said these words with such clear disdain and clear intent to hurt me that I felt my heart beat faster and my face flushed with heat. The walk ended badly. After that scene, Emilio became cold toward me. It hurt me deeply. I tried to bring him back to how he was before, but I failed. One day, when we were alone together, I said to him, "Emilio, if I followed you tomorrow, what would you do?" "I would obey that divine command." "But what after that?" "After that?" he asked, as if confused by the question. Yes, after that, I continued. Won't time come when you'd look at me with shame or disgust? Disgrace? I don't see it. How not? What would I be to you after that? Oh, if you made this sacrifice for me, I would be a coward to ever blame you for it. But you would think it inside. I swear I wouldn't. Well, in my eyes I would. I would never forgive myself for that mistake. Emilio buried his face in his hands and seemed to cry. Until then, I had spoken with great effort, but now I went to him and gently lifted his face from his hands. What is this? I asked. Don't you see you're making me cry too? He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Mine were already wet. Farewell, he said suddenly. I must leave. And he took a step toward the door. If you promise to live, go, I told him. But if you have any dark thoughts, stay. I don't know what he saw in my eyes, but taking the hand I offered him, he kissed it again, and again. Those were the first kisses Anne said to me with passion. I'll stay, Eugenia. We heard a noise outside. I sent someone to check. It was my husband, arriving sick. He had collapsed in his office earlier. He had come to, but still felt very weak. Some friends brought him home in a carriage. I ran to the door. My husband looked pale and broken. He could barely walk, leaning on his friends for support. I became desperate and stopped thinking about anything else. The doctor who came with my husband quickly ordered some treatments and medicine. I was anxious, asking everyone if my husband would be okay. Everyone tried to calm me down. Emilio seemed truly sorry for what had happened. He went to my husband and shook his hand. When Emilio was ready to leave, my husband said to him, "Listen, I know you can't always be here, but please, if you can, come every day." "Of course," Emilio replied. And he left. My husband felt unwell all through the rest of that day, and through the night. I didn't sleep at all. I stayed by his side the whole time. The next morning I was completely drained. So many different emotions in such a long, sleepless night had worn me out completely, gave in to exhaustion. I called my cousin Elvira and went to bed. I'll stop writing this letter here. There's not much more left in my sad story. Until Sunday. Chapter 7. Eugenia's husband fell ill, but the sickness didn't last long. Each day got worse than the one before. By the 8th day, the doctors gave up hope. When I heard the news, I felt like I had lost my mind. He was my husband, Carlota. No matter what had happened between us, I couldn't forget that he had been the man who walked beside me through life. He had been my anchor when my thoughts went adrift. When Emilio found out, he came to see me. I was in terrible pain. He tried to comfort me, and I told him honestly how much this loss hurt me. One night, we were all together, my cousin Elvira, a relative of my husband's, and Emilio. We were keeping watch by the sick man's bedside. After a long silence, he turned to me and said, "Give me your hand." He took it in his and squeezed it with all the strength he had left. Then He turned his face to the wall. He died. 4 months passed after those events. Emilio stayed close to me during my grief. He was one of the few who never left my side during the funeral rites and everything that followed. But soon, his visits became less frequent. I thought it was out of kindness that he didn't want to bother me or seem insensitive. Then, at the end of that 4-month period, I heard from one of my husband's old friends that Emilio was planning to leave town. I couldn't believe it. I wrote him a letter. By then, I realized I loved him again, maybe even more than before, now that I was free. This is what I wrote. Emilio, I heard you are leaving. Is that really true? I can't even trust my own ears. You know how much I love you. Maybe it's not the perfect time to make our love official, but it won't be long before the world sees the bond that love has placed on us. Come see me and tell me in person. Yours, Eugenia. He came to see me himself. He promised that he was only leaving for a short business trip and that he would return soon. The trip was supposed to start in 8 days. I made him swear it was the truth, and he did. I let him go. 4 days later, I received this letter from him. I lied, Eugenia. I am leaving now. I lied again, I won't be coming back. I can't. I held the letter in my hands, trembling as I read his words. It was over. Emilio had made his decision clear. A life together was not for him. He called it an ideal of happiness, but only if he were not a man with habits contrary to marriage. The farewell crushed me like a storm breaking on fragile ground. My dreams collapsed in that moment. In place of my love, my first love, I received nothing but cold ingratitude and silent rejection. I told myself it was justice. That guilty love could never end well. I had been punished by the very consequences of my own wrongdoing. But still, I asked, how could this man who seemed to adore me so deeply walk away from someone whose honesty he could trust? After all, hadn't I resisted temptation for so long before giving in to my heart? At the time, it felt like a mystery too deep to understand. Now, years later, I see the truth plainly. Emilio was no different from any other flatterer skilled in charming women. He only played his part better than most. That is my story. You can imagine what I went through during those 2 long years. But time, strange as it is, brings healing. I am finally free of that pain. The hurt pride of love, betrayed and the guilt of knowing I had broken the trust of my dear husband left scars I carry even today. Still, I believe I have paid dearly for my mistake. Before my conscience, I feel I have redeemed myself. But what of God? Will I ever find forgiveness in His eyes? And what about you? Tomorrow, you must answer these questions for me. 24 hours after I send this letter, I will be with you once more. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.